love technology. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you had a fantastic lunch. My name is Mel Rodriguez. I'm the creative director at TedxBristol. TED.com, as you might know, is a huge online platform for sharing ideas and knowledge spread all around the world. It's arguably what I would call the biggest ideas bank on the planet, because its talks have been watched over 1 billion times and counting, about 35 a second. And one of our TedxBristol talks that just went on TED.com has had 80,000 or so views in the few weeks that it's been on there. So it's a very powerful tool and we love it. So what do we do? So we are licensed by TED.com, and TedxBristol is one of the biggest TEDx events in the world. We champion new talent and we look for great ideas and innovation that is homegrown in Bristol and the Southwest. We create fantastic videos, live events, and then we put them on YouTube and we share them with anyone who wants to watch and engage. Has anyone here ever watched a TED Talk? Hands up. Great. So I don't have to explain what it is. It's a bit like Fight Club. Sometimes people don't understand until I explain Fight Club or TED. For bonus points, who knows what the T, the E and the D stand for? Helena, put your hand down, you work for TedxBristol. Any guesses? T? Technology. Gold star. E? Education. You would think it was education. It is actually entertainment, but I think it should be education, or maybe it be TED instead of TED. And then final one, the D? Design. Well done, Monika. I don't even think it counts because you probably knew that already. But there's no prizes, so it doesn't matter. But the reason that we were so delighted to be invited by Black Star Solutions to come to TechFusion today was because the T in our name is for technology, and it's a no-brainer really. And one of the things that we are most passionate about doing is finding the tech and innovation stories happening in Bristol and sharing them with the world. So today we're actually pioneering something a little bit trailblazing. So we are recording the second episode of our podcast. Our podcast is called Reflect, Rethink and Reboot. It's all about how we take a pause and look around and do our best work and not only survive but thrive in these incredibly uncertain and turbulent times, both in the world of work and life in general. Has Trump left yet? Anyone? No? Yeah. See what I mean? Turbulent times. So loads of ways that you can get involved. Slido is the first one. So today we're taking questions from you using a tech platform. So if you go on to Slido, which is either sli.do or there's a Slido app, you can enter the code for the conference, which is all lowercase letters, TechFusion 2019, and you can ask our panel anything within reason. So I would encourage you to do that. And our recording that we're making today will be available to download on all the normal podcast platforms in the next couple of weeks. So Apple, Google Play and Spotify. And if you can't get enough and want to continue the conversation after this panel, because it is a quick one today, please follow us at TedxBristol on Twitter, #Reflect, Rethink, Reboot. And our team are dotted around. They're mostly wearing red and black. And if you'd like to get involved in a future podcast, you might want to sponsor it, you might have an idea for one, come and chat to us. And we're also looking for partners as well for our 2019 event, which comes up in November and is at the Bristol Old Vic. Helena is at the back wearing a very sparkly red skirt, and she will basically nab you if you want to chat about any of those things. So without further ado, it's fantastic to be here. Sit back, relax and enjoy, think of some questions, and it's my pleasure to hand over to James and the panel for our panel discussion and podcast. James.
Great, thank you, Mel. Oh. Are these working? Definitely worth a round of applause. So, okay, all good. Hello and welcome back. Nice to see you again. For those that weren't here earlier, I'm James Potton. I'm an entrepreneur and self-confessed geek. I'm sort of doubly odd, as I'm also interested in how humans as a species progress and connect, and I think technology kind of is the answer for that. I love working with great minds to make sort of purposeful ideas happen. Help to the rapid scaling of eco-surety here in Bristol. Currently working on a pet sort of project, which is a design and tech school in London, and also chair DECI, which is also a Bristol-based microfinance charity. So Steve Jobs talked about how it's hard to connect the dots going forwards. You can tend to only connect them looking back. Well, we're going to try and prove Steve wrong and try and get a little glimpse into the future with these amazing panelists today. So I'm super excited to hear from them and hear where they see the world's going. We're sort of positioning this around the workplace and tech, but I'm sure it will take a number of different journeys, and that would be excellent if it does. And obviously, you've also got a lot of burning questions on your mind, so get on Slido and ask some questions. We have Monika here, the fairy godmother board of the Bristol startup scene, so from SETsquared. We've got Jason, Robin Hood of Serverwood, so AKA the ethical hacker. We've got Stephanie, Dr. Doolittle of Digital, so OKKO Health. And we have David, the GUI guru from Galway, from Mitel. So we're here from, well, a little round of applause to the panelists first, please. So first up, I'd like you to introduce yourself in 2 minutes and just give us a feel for your journey and how you got here today, and we'll start from this centre. Monika.
Well, thank you for having me here. So as James introduced me, I'm Monika Radclyffe. I'm the Centre Director for SETsquared in Bristol. We are a technology incubator. So we are basically a centre for early-stage entrepreneurs who are developing new technologies to help them fast-track their ideas. And we work with about 85 businesses right now. So actually, Stephanie from OKKO Health is one of the members of our incubator, so it gives you a good taste of what kind of businesses we're working with. But what brought me here in terms of my own journey, I joined SETsquared 3 years ago, and previously I was involved in a tech startup scene in London. And I got really attracted to the Bristol technology scene because it felt like it's really up and coming. There's lots of really interesting technologies, really interesting businesses, but yet no one in London hears about those amazing technologies and amazing innovations. So I felt that it's the right time to join as it's all growing, but also it gave me more opportunities to look for really those emerging, unknown innovations that can truly transform the world, but they need a lot of help in terms of business support and commercial expertise to fulfill their full potential for what they can achieve. So that's what really attracted me to join SETsquared and to move to Bristol to work with that scene. And as you possibly know, Bristol is now the second biggest technology cluster in the UK. I would love to think that one day we could be the first, but it's a long journey. It's just a very exciting place to be.
Awesome, thank you, Monika. Jason.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. So first of all, Bristol born and bred. So it's nice to be doing something in Bristol for a change. So I've been in information security for 24, 25 years now, and was the founder of two very well-known startups, which actually were from Bristol. So at 18, I founded one of the world's first ethical hacking companies. Ethical in the sense that we were trying to get permission to hack into the Fortune 100. But going back 24 years ago, 18, 19-year-old knocking on doors to say, can I hack into you? The sales cycle was very, very long. So very quickly we realized that no one would allow us to hack in. So we started a process called a no hack, no fee. White Hat then was, I exited from White Hat. And from there, I created a company called CryptoCard, which in fact is one of the leading technologies in the world now. And you would all use the CryptoCard technology on a daily basis. So that was ultimately from the days of White Hat. We quickly realized it was really easy to hack into any organization if we could get their password. So very quickly we decided, can we change the password and create a random one-time password? So you know all those apps and these gadgets that generate the one-time password? That was one of the original technologies that you all consume in one way or another to date. So for me, my passion is cyber security, but taking technology and disrupting other technology. So not reinventing what's already there, but taking what's there and making it simpler and easier to consume.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. Stephanie.
So I moved to Bristol 3 years ago, and founded more recently OKKO Health in order to, so that people who have eye problems or eye disease can home monitor from a smartphone rather than being reliant upon going into hospital all the time to have their vision monitored. So my background is firmly in eye health. I also have a background in research. So originally qualifying as an optician, optometrist, and went through the NHS, through a few different hospitals, and realised there was stuff that we weren't able to give patients. We weren't able to give people what they really needed, which was the ability and the independence to monitor from home. And so, yeah, that's what our company is really set up to do now. We're developing video games. Our technology works through a video game system. So the idea is that the technology, you'd have a prescription app, and the person will play the tailored video game, and that will give them data and the doctor data about how well they're doing. And the whole idea is early diagnosis. So most eye disease or changes in eye disease can absolutely be treated if we pick it up early. And so I'm really fascinated by the health system that we will all use, in 10 years' time. What will our NHS look like, and how can we make sure going forward that is a health system we're going to, when it adopts AI at scale, how can we make sure that technology will work for us? And I'm not one of these people who works in a healthcare system and thinks it's for other people. I know we'll all be using it, including myself someday. And so I'm really keen that we properly right now begin to think about, what do we want our healthcare system to look like? How do we want to interact with it? Because we're all going to have to.
Excellent, thank you. David.
Hi, Dave Sylke is my name. I slightly different perspective, work with a company called Mitel, and Mitel is our role in life is to make communications and collaboration as simple as it possibly can be. And we probably have 70 million users of Mitel technology somewhere in the world. And we're kind of in a unique space at the moment because we're looking at challenges around collaboration and communication, the cloud platform and service delivery and all sorts of different things. I have a West of Ireland accent. I live in Galway. So for me, you asked the question about how you got here. I was in Liverpool last night. Mitel is a big partner of Liverpool. We look at their customer experience, and I took the train this morning, and I was have an office in Galway in the west coast of Ireland, looking at a team that lives all over the world, and we live what we speak every single day of the week in terms of how we can make communications and collaboration as simple as possible. And I'd also like to thank the Black Star guys, because we have a really great relationship with them as a partner, and it's great to be back here in Bristol again. So thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay, so let's sort of move on to, I guess, where we are currently. We're looking at the future of work and what's happening right now. Quick straw poll: who in the room runs a business? Many people? Yeah, probably about half. Who employs humans? That's a similar amount. That's very good. Who's using AI in their business? 1 or 2, 3. Okay, excellent. Who gets the two confused? Excellent. Right. So not as many, though. So the singularity isn't here yet, is, I guess, the takeaway point. But technology is transforming how we work. By 2030, I think, especially in North America, but probably Europe as well, there'd be more freelance roles than employed roles. AI is likely to remove around 25% of the jobs that we currently sort of know of. It may well bring new ones in. So we're here in Bristol, and with the previous industrial revolution, we were at the coalface of the engine room of some of these tech trends. And Bristol, as already been mentioned, is known as the most productive tech cluster, second in the UK, based on the TechNation report. SETsquared has been ranked as the world-leading business incubator by UBI Global. So, Monika, what's happening here in Bristol and why?
There's lots happening. And it was interesting you asked a question about AI. It's definitely one of the emerging trends, and I think people underestimate how much they actually engage with AI. Because whenever, for example, a website asks you to identify which one of those pictures is a picture of a bus, you're actually helping to train AI system. Or you know, in some of the cases when you engage with customer service and you ask a question and you sort of get automated responses, and you're speaking with a chatbot, so that's also AI. So there's actually so many, you know, the technology is everywhere now, and we engage with it on a daily basis. We certainly see a lot of very interesting companies working in that space, automating various different services that were previously delivered by people. So, you know, AI is becoming quite popular in legal sector, in recruitment specifically, and we do have a couple of companies that are developing solutions in that space. But also, I think there's a couple of other sectors that are emerging that I would like to flag here. Cyber is a very fascinating one, but I'm sure Jason will talk more about it. But also health tech. We see so much emerging in that space. In two different areas, there's lots of really interesting medical innovations. So the way how we can help NHS and health system work better, but also self-manage and prevent various different conditions. So that's a very exciting space, and we see, certainly when I look at number of applications from those different sectors, there's an increase in application from those entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think there's a sort of, realization that the most underutilized resource in the NHS is the patient. Is that right? So it's how to sort of, you know, push that through. And it actually follows on nicely to Stephanie. So you were part of SETsquared. Sort of tell us, you know, what that was like for you, and, you know, from where you started with an idea to, you know, where you are now. You know, what was that journey like, and how did being in SETsquared help you?
Yeah, the journey, I always feel like we're still at the start of it, you know. I mean, it doesn't matter how much you do, you always still feel like you're still learning so much. You feel like you've just been born. So yeah, being part of SETsquared is fantastic. I mean, I've been part just for over a year now. And when I first came along, it was really an idea. We had validated the idea to a certain extent. We had a little like proof of concept app, and it was basically me and my app, and now we have a small team. We've got 6 of us, and yeah, 2 full-time, 4 part-time, and yeah, doing that in a year and realizing actually when I go into work now, we have, you know, it's a we and not an I. That's a really big thing. But also our plans for the technology have really grown. So initially I thought, okay, we're making an app and the app's going to test vision. But really now, being part of SETsquared, it's educated us to the point where we can think of a system approach, and also really think, okay, not just about the UK, which was definitely what I thought about when I first came to SETsquared, but now it's saying, okay, where does this fit globally? And thinking globally, you know, and getting on a plane to America, getting on a plane to India, and just having that mindset of, okay, let's see what opportunities are out there, rather than just thinking, you know, more regionally and locally. As well as that, the biggest thing for me has been, you know, being in SETsquared is being part of a little network of people who everybody, you know, who's having a coffee, everybody who's nerding away, you know, in their little offices. You know, everybody's in a similar boat, which is extremely uncomfortable position, because you don't, you know, you're always hoping that your technology is, you know, going to be progressing. You're always hoping that your funding's going to be progressing. You're making new connections constantly. You're trying to work out, okay, what's useful to me, what's not useful to me, how do I learn to manage people, how do I learn to manage myself, especially coming from an institutionalized NHS into startup is a bit of a different way of working. So that change and that support, it's been really good to have people around and people to have a coffee with and have a bottle of wine with, to, you know, in the good times to celebrate, but also during the really difficult times, you know, having 3 different people, 5 different people you can just call and say, look, I need to make a decision about X. How do we make the best decision? And that for me has been like the biggest highlight. And this community in Bristol is so open, and it's so close, everybody knows each other, that it's a really exciting thing to be part of, and I'm very, very pleased to have been let under the wing, really.
Sounds amazing. Very jealous. Okay, so David, taking that global point that Stephanie made, can you sort of tell us what it's meant for you, you know, in your world where you work, and you know, what's technology done for the way in which you engage with your working life?
Sure. At a personal level, I moved jobs about a year ago, and I used to work with a company that was primarily based on the west coast of the States. which involved 2 weeks every 6 weeks on a plane to California. And if that doesn't destroy you, nothing will. It's just a challenging life, as much as I love the company. My work-life balance today is we use video constantly. We communicate, I would say, at least 70 to 80% of the time over video. And we collaborate using whiteboards and chat and, of course, voice. But as a company, we see three things, really. We see, and these are challenges. The first is just the desire for companies to be, and people to be mobile, work anywhere with any device. And whether that's the argument of always being on, you have to balance that. But that's a real driver for business. The second, Monika mentioned it, is AI and MI. And I think there's almost a fear of that, but I have a completely different view. I think it allows us to reconnect in ways that we can't even imagine. But there is a challenge for businesses to understand the volume of data that's coming at them, and how do you analyze the data, and what do you do with it? I mean, you see all this stuff, and you've got to figure that out. And the third piece is it's a real balance, and it's the balance between the technology and the person. And what we're seeing more and more is, there is a pervasiveness to want to use technology, but there's also a huge burning desire to reconnect at a personal and individual level. And Stephanie mentioned that, and that's something that we should not forget. Technology allows, but we are still a people, and that's very important.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Actually, Joe earlier presented, for those that were in the room, it was amazing. He talked about like technology's increased daddy time for him. So it's like not getting on the train, going up to London, coming back. It was just like a sort of such a key point about, the change in which, him being able to dial in completely changes like his home life. So, thank you, Jason. For yourself, what trends are you seeing? What are you seeing in the world? Because there's a lot in.
Yeah, from a cyber point of view, actually, we're not really getting any more secure. Is the honest truth. We're not. We're creating more and more data on a daily basis. The ability to collaborate with data, have data in multiple locations, makes it far easier for a bad guy to get access to that data. But the problem can be solved, and the biggest problem is people. So from an artificial intelligence and machine learning point of view, it's using the new innovations and technology to apply certain security controls to data without you actually knowing. And that's where we really need to get to, because we're seeing a huge acceleration in innovation, disruption of technology. With machine learning, once quantum compute hits and becomes more of a commercial tool, technology is going to accelerate even quicker. So really, the AI machine learning has a huge opportunity to make our life safer, both in the personal life, but also in our work life as well. Are we there yet? No, we're definitely not. We're just really starting. And I think for me personally, the next 10 years is going to be more exciting than my past 24 years in this industry.
Awesome, thank you. I guess if we start to take that sort of future focus a bit more in this discussion, and picking up on the AI piece, there's the hype around AI and the fear, and I think there's a kind of joke that machine learning is written in Python and AI is written in PowerPoint. So there's this kind of, we're still not quite there yet. We're still sort of trying to understand what it means and where we're going. But there's a lot of, we see a lot of, bids and proposals about ideas and products with AI written in it. From your perspective, David, your vision for the future, is it utopian, dystopian, or somewhere in the middle? Not too much of a heavy question.
The vision of the future is now. I think if we go back to the trends that we see, and for us, one of the biggest things that we're noticing is you use the acronym AAS, so anything as a service. It's literally anything as a service. So that could be your phone call, it could be your instant message, it could be anything that you want. Look at Netflix. We have moved into a service-based society, so we shouldn't kid ourselves that AI and MI isn't part of our every single day life, because it is. whether that's your train ticket or your Uber or your hotel. And it's the understanding and the learning that's putting into that. And the second piece we're seeing a lot of is there used to be old worlds of contact centers and agents picking up phone calls. That world is done and dusted in terms of it really is about creating every single customer experience, and it has to be authentic. And that's a big challenge for companies. We spent yesterday with Liverpool, the football club, and they are literally turning their whole customer experience inside out. So that means they want my data. They want every single interaction I've had, whether that's an instant message or a phone call or I've gone to the stadium, because they want to understand. Well, first of all, they want to sell, but they also want to make sure that you get to the world of almost hyper-personalization and that experience. And the last piece, and I think is really interesting on security, because I think security goes in two ways. There's lots of concern about security when it comes to data and GDPR and who holds what data. But we shouldn't forget the security of the individual and what technology can do to that. Steph, you mentioned healthcare. We look at mass notification and the importance of instantaneously being able to communicate with all of your staff or your teachers, your healthcare professionals. And that's as much security as data and everything else. So it's a long-winded answer to your question, but it continues to evolve. It'll evolve around collaboration and communications. AI and MI will absolutely become pervasive. But we cannot, again, forget the people as part of this and making sure that what we're trying to do is to enhance that experience every time.
That's awesome. Would anyone else like to jump in on your visions in the worlds that you're in?
Yes, I mean, I completely agree. I think it's really exciting to see all those emerging technologies and see how we engage with them in the future. And, we all like to play with new gadgets, but I think my vision of the future is focus more on how the technologies will affect our lives personally. Because if you think about your jobs, your roles, your businesses, there's definitely a proportion of your role that could be fully automated. And add to that, for example, the time you spend commuting. And imagine, next few years, 10 years, 20 years, who knows, when we have self-driving cars, you will have that time back. So actually, the future, the way how I see it, is that technology will enable us to claim more time back. And then what do we do with it? Do we just spend more time working? Or do we use it for doing something else and perhaps focus more on engaging as human beings instead of engaging with technology? So I think it's a very fascinating thing to think about in terms of the future.
That's awesome. It's a whole other panel event, I think.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. Jason?
Yeah, my vision for the world it hasn't really changed since when I started my first startup, is do security autonomously without you actually knowing. We're still not there. My concern though with AI and machine learning is it has huge benefit, but we're seeing lots of organizations talk about machine learning, AI, to raise more money, to be acquired, etc. But ultimately, the problem that I see outside of the security area is it actually solving a problem? What is the user need? And so you see, maybe older technology, add some machine learning, artificial intelligence, and if they add blockchain, they raise an extra 20 million to it because they say they got blockchain. But is it actually solving the problem? And is it solving the user need? And for me, there's a huge gap in the need of meeting what the user or the individual needs.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Stephanie, in your world?
In my world, I feel like the place where we have to get to is starts today with the conversations we have about how we want this to look. And rather than saying, okay, humans part of this, I think humans should be central to what we do, particularly in healthcare. And it's easy for me to say that in healthcare. But I firmly believe, in 10 years' time, we're going to look back at today and go, oh, how did, the doctors and the management develop that new service without the patients? Because that is what currently happens. And I think what we've got to do from today is put people in the centre and say, how do you want to be looked after? How do you want to be communicated with? What are your security concerns? What are your concerns about how your data is going to be used? How can we make you feel safe? because healthcare is going to be really, really exciting. And, thinking about the predictive side of things as well. And I bet what's going to happen is that with genomic testing, which is going to be a really big thing, it might be the first sniff of a cold. That's an exaggeration, but if you're sick for a couple of weeks, it might be actually that you do a finger prick blood test, and that you'll know much, much earlier, actually this is something potentially very serious. And so there's considerations we need to make as humans about, well, how much do we want to know? If there isn't a treatment for that disease, do I want to know about it? Dementia is a really good example of that. And there's no doubt that we're going to learn about diagnosis a lot earlier. And I think really it's about saying, well, as a community, how do we want to be treated around those diseases? What do we want to know? And also about really preventable things. So diabetes is this raging epidemic, and yet we're much harsher perhaps about things like drugs and smoking than we are about sugar. And yet diabetes is the thing that's absolutely going to affect a large proportion of us in the room. And what's really exciting, particularly about diabetes being so preventable, is that machine learning AI will give us individual insights as to what we can do to keep ourselves healthy, because we're going to live for far too long. So, how can I make sure that our bodies are well enough to really enjoy those extra years that we're going to be here? Yeah. And it's having those conversations today and starting to say, well, as humans, what do we want and how do we want to live?
Yeah. That's amazing, thank you. And there's also, because the fear of AI is it completely takes over, but that isn't necessarily where we're at with doctors, for example. The inputs currently are the vital sort of signs of the patient, but we're suggesting that changes to being the input from the 5 algorithms that have gone off and read, 1 million papers and tried to work out a diagnosis. But we're not looking to remove doctors entirely and so on, are we? It's not, and even with things like driverless cars and so on, there's still kind of at the moment we're unable to legislate for a vehicle that doesn't have a sort of responsibility unless it goes up to the CEO of the algorithm that they don't even know how it was written because it was machine learning. So,
responsibility is a really interesting point, isn't it? I mean, this is something that certainly within our medical world, we've no idea who's going to take responsibility for the algorithms. Is that something presumably that's really common across everybody's?
I think law generally in the legal construct of UK law needs to change it.
What do you think it should look like?
Just put it into machine learning to work it out. Yeah, no, it's it's if you look at the whole legal construct of particularly UK, it doesn't apply to today's world. Particularly from a technology point of view, and even from a cyber point of view. I've been involved in where there's been some major breaches happen, and I've gone in as an expert witness. And the judge, they have no understanding what you're talking about. So how can they defend or prosecute against a crime which they have no understanding of how it's happened? It's a problem.
We've got time for a few questions. I think if we've got the catch box, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to? I think Sarah, has she got one? Or
Actually, I've been prioritising them.
Yeah.
I put Ben to the top.
Perfect. Okay.
Ben,
So
which way?
is Ben here?
Yep, hi.
Ah, perfect. Throw him the catch box. Far away.
It's a microphone.
Just where we get smashed.
So I can read it behind you, but I can read it on my phone as well. So I wanted to ask. It's a broad question, but one I'm very interested to know about. How do you see the UK solving the increasing tech skills gap issue? I've written the industry is growing so vastly. How can the country and/or businesses, the tech industry as a whole, assist in providing learning and addressing that issue, which is looking like it's only going to get bigger and nastier?
Okay, I'll start. So, anyone in this room have children going to university this summer? Anyone? Or anyone they know? Okay, give you a real example. If they're going to university to do a degree in technology, a 4-year degree, what they learn in the first 2 years will become irrelevant in the 4th year. So I think I get involved in advising startups, etc., tech startups around the world. and I think the skill in actually the tech side of it, it's there. It's just more of the awareness, commercial awareness, business awareness. So I think personally, from a technology skill point of view, there's an undercurrent of very, very clever people. I think they need the landscape to blossom. The bigger issue is cyber, particularly the UK. So the UK government put a press release out today. We are so vulnerable at the moment, be it PLCs, be it small businesses, and that's the bigger issue is on the cyber skills gap at the moment. There just isn't enough people. People believe cyber to be very geeky and techie. It's not. It's just the ability to look at many different facets and problems and bring them together and solve. So I think teaching and learning at university, great, but actually hands-on real experience has more benefit.
And I agree with that. Within SETsquared, we encourage our members to take on work experience students, apprenticeships and internships, because that's where individuals can really learn through that hands-on experience. So even this summer alone, we have 13 interns from University of Bristol joining a number of different companies because we really want to encourage that kind of activity.
That's great. Do you guys have any thoughts on?
Given the fact that I live in Galway, probably not. It's not just a UK issue. It's a European, it's a global issue. But there are definitely signs of encouragement. I've got 2 kids of that age, one about to go into university and one who's 2 years. And in Ireland, they've had this transition year introduced for quite some time. So in your 4th year of secondary school or high school, it's a year out, and it's a year to explore. And it's a year, it may not necessarily just be high tech and technology, but what it gives kids is it stops the learning by rote process and introduces them to different sorts of experiences. You're seeing a huge investment in STEM in general in Ireland, because Ireland would look at it and say, like, to be competitive, if we're not the #1 in technology, in terms of education, in terms of the companies that we're bringing in, it's a complete and utter disadvantage. So it's encouraging to see, but it's a long journey.
I think what we need, when we talk about education and getting young people ready is also thinking about young girls, older girls, women, into these areas. I think there's a real risk here that, given our lives will be governed by these technologies, in the future, that actually, we're going to be creating these technologies by generally 1/2 of the population for both halves of the population. So it's really important that, in areas that would have been seen as male dominated, that we encourage young women to go for it. And also people like myself, who'd firmly committed to one industry to educate themselves, about AI, and make sure as well that it is ready for 2/2 of the population. That for me is something we need to really start concentrating on, and really learning to work together in mixed teams. There's a big issue with VC funding at the moment that 90% of for every pound that's spent, 90p goes to an all-male technology team. And so my team is mixed, and actually I can't imagine it any other way. And that's really, really important going forward.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you said there. And I come from the boot camp world, and we believe you should put arts into STEM so it becomes STEAM, and that actually there is a this sort of bro-y culture in the developer world, but the design world has the opportunity for diversity throughout, and actually how it's designed will if there's diversity in design, it will be far more accessible to a greater number of the population. So and learning by doing, really agree with that. So Oliver, is Oliver around? Okay, might be the last question, but let's see how deep it is. Yeah, okay, cool.
Oh yeah, because there was another one which I actually just favoured in favour of mine, which was the Andrew Maloney's one. No, I think you've partly already came onto this, but I was interested in what you think the difference is between AI and machine learning, where you draw the line. Do we genuinely have AI deployed anywhere yet?
So in my industry, in cybersecurity, there is technology that is actively using artificial intelligence. So take the banking system. So in my day job, I'm a CTO and head of strategy and vision for one of the largest cybersecurity companies in the world, Thales. Every 90% of all financial transactions in the world, we protect in one way or another. So within the banks and the banking system, they are using AI to look at anomalies in transactions and also threat detection. So, but it's only a small fraction of it's actually being used at this moment in time.
It's a very good question. I came from a world where the marketing was always viewed as the creative. The world of marketing now is a technology based as much as it is creative, and you get into a world of data and predictive analytics. To the extent where you would expect that your chat box, is that AI, is it MI, is getting to the point where it has the ability to predict the conversation that the person needs to have based on your history. And it definitely merges. But in the financial industry, in hospitality, in healthcare more and more, you definitely have AI. You have more machine-to-machine communication than we can ever fathom. People always, I think, make the assumption that the intelligence is between a machine and a person, but most of the communication is machine to machine that we never ever see. But it's a really, really good question when you probe the difference between the two, but we definitely see it in operation on both sides.
I'm sure there's definitions, exact definitions of what AI and machine learning is, but I think in very simple terms, in my understanding, AI is simply an algorithm that has been trained using a specific data set. So, for example, it could be used as in a chatbot. When you have hundreds or thousands of the same responses, you can train the algorithm to respond in the same way to a specific question. However, machine learning is the next step when the algorithm trains an algorithm. So that's when you can program them to go the next step and build more complicated scenarios.
And nobody knows what it's doing. It's,
How far does it go?
Yeah. Trains are trains. It's a really, really interesting space. I think there's Yuval Noah Harari said, we talk so much about investing in artificial intelligence, but we should start to invest more in human intelligence. So there's, we get a bit carried away with it sometimes. Okay, so next up, Sarah. Thank you for the question, Oliver. Sarah around? I think she's up the back there.
Shall I throw it?
Yeah, all the way. What about?
Can you put my question up? Thank you. It's World Environment Day today. How can organisations continue to innovate with their tech and be mindful of the environment and the future of our planet?
Awesome. Who wants to go first? Might put Stephanie on the spot. Oh
dear. Well, I think you discussed kind of really about this transport. And, even as a small startup, we're starting to think, okay, when do I really need to get on a plane and when I don't? That's the environmental thing that's in my head at the moment. That and getting my colleagues to stop using disposable cups. So I'm probably not the best person to answer.
I'd make it very personal again. It's how I live. I do not need to travel probably 80% less than I used to because of the use of technology. That's massive. And I think I read a stat this morning, which was that 80% of the workforce is mobile at least once a week, and 80% of the workforce don't have a desk. So you're beginning to see the pervasiveness of communication, or just tools and technology in general that are reducing the need for business and work travel. I hope it doesn't reduce the need for people travel, because I think that's incredibly important, going back to the beginning of this, which is the people-to-people connection. But again, the way I live my life is radically different now because of the use of technology than it was even a year ago.
To answer your question, I'll try and answer it in one answer. If we look at today's world and the traditional things that we do, so if we take all the modern technology or even some of the newer technology, for me, that whole landscape is ripe for disruption, totally. So the way you consume it, the way you purchase it, and the way you use it, because 90% of it doesn't actually meet the real user need. So if you just take that landscape, start tweaking it to be more meaningful, change the business model, the commercial model, you're going to have a dramatic effect on the environment as it is.
And I would second that. Listen to the customers, because it is really for them that you're designing the technology in your product. So it's listening to the customers at what they want, but also maybe listening to children, because they are the future, and actually children are very, very environmentally minded. So getting their feedback on board in designing the product of the future may be a good idea.
That's amazing, thank you. Okay, so I think we're out of time, yeah. One last sort of quick fire round. So Ray Kurzweil believes that we'll hit the singularity by around 2030, which is when narrow AI becomes general AI, so it's more powerful than all humans put together. So in less than, it may have to be 10 words rather than 20 words because we're running out of time. From the far end, what advice would you give your 20, 30-year-old self? David, go.
Oh, my Lord. I think the advice I would give is that we need to learn from them. That's because I just look at the way that they interact with technology, which is part and parcel of everything that they do. So my advice is look at the kids and look at the way they use technology versus me trying to teach them. It's just never going to happen.
Awesome, thank you. Stephanie.
Thinking about, 20-year-olds going into tech right now, I would say think human first. This is technology that we are creating for us, not for investors.
Oh, very good.
So in 2030, if we think we're seeing disruption and innovation now, wait till quantum compute becomes commercial.
Well, everything's been said. What do I add to it? I think I would focus a lot more on diversity and making sure that recognizing that the world we engage with is very diverse and we build products that are fit for that purpose.
Awesome, thank you, thank you. Okay, so there you have it. What an amazing bunch. I've heard some fascinating discussions, fascinating questions. Thank you for those. If it's left you with more questions than answers, and I'm sure people won't mind being approached afterwards for a quick chat. Remember, sort of listen to the children and learn through doing. Get out there and try things. Thank you all for coming. A big round of applause for the panelists today.